and let's get right into what we're going to see. So don't worry about missing anything. I'll have everything uploaded on my YouTube channel. In fact, I already have my first video up there, so you can see everything in my YouTube channel, Vibro Programming. And a huge thanks to Daniel Schiffman again for inspiring this whole coding class. And now that we got that, let's get into the topic of what we're learning today. What we're learning is conditionals, logical operators, and loops. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at are user variables. So if I switch on to my coding sketch, here's what we have so far that we left off from last class. If we run this, we will see this kind of circle. So we've covered everything over here about setup, how it runs once, draw, how it runs many times, and how to draw stuff, how to fill in stuff, and how to stroke using this. So what we're going to learn now is we want to create a circle. So let me just really make a super simple circle. Let me make it white and make it white, and let's put it over, let's say 100, and the position will be 100. And let me make a smaller circle, so 50 by 50, and let's run this. Okay. Oh, that's weird. Oh, there it is. All right. So here is our circle. So what we want to do is we want to create a circle, and we want to let it bounce around in our thing. So far what we've been doing is we've been using built-in variables. So for example, Mousex, Mousey, width, height. But now you're going to learn how to create your own variable. So to first create a user-defined variable, you must first, so let me just put this to the side. What you have to do first is you have to declare your variable. So declaration just means I want a variable. So let's say you want to create a circle X variable. This is what is called declaration. You are telling processing, hey, I want to create this variable. And what this int means is that this variable will hold an integer value. So integer values are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so on. They're not decimal values. Those are what floats are. So float just means a floating decimal, but we're going to use int in this case. And then next what we have to do is we have to assign the value. So what I'll do is I'll move this background over here into draw, and I'll assign the value. So circle X, let's make it equal 50. So this is what we mean by assigning the value. So then now you can use this variable somewhere else. So let's say we want to assign this value over here. So if we run that, okay, we will see this circle, again, not moving. But what's cool is that there's only one spot that you really have to, change the value. So if we try running it again, and you will now see it over here, a little bit moved over to the side, but you get the point. So these it's really great because what you can do now is you can now increment. So increment means just adding +1, +1, +1. So let's say what we do is, let's put this back at 50. Let's now make sure that, let's get rid of this one. We don't really need that since the background is black anyways. And now what we are going to do is we're going to increment it. So every time remember, draw runs every single frame. So this runs at, let's say, 60 frames per second. This will continuously run as long as this program is running. So let's say I want to increment, and I want to increment circle X by 1, right? So what we'll do is circle x plus 1. So don't freak out. This isn't like kind of like a paradox. Wait, so circle x is circle x plus 1, but circle x is circle x. Don't worry about that. What we're doing is every time this function, this draw function runs, circle x gets 1 added to it. So what will happen if we try to run it? What you'll see is our circle is inching closer and closer and closer to the end. In fact, what we can do is we can make it go faster. So let's say I want it to go twice as fast. So now what I'm going to see is the circle is moving twice as fast. Look at it go. All right, so now let's say we want it to go half as fast. So before it was 1, so let's try 0.5. Oh, it says there's a type mismatch. But why is that? I mean, everything looks pretty good. The reason is that circle x is an integer variable. That means it can only hold 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. It can't hold any decimal values. So what you need to do is declare this as a float. And now, you might be scratching your head and thinking, what does it mean by, let's say, there's like, we have points, right? So point 1, 2, 3, 4. The pixels are going from left to right and up to down, right? So what does it mean by pixel 50.5? Well, the good thing is that processing allows you to do this because what it secretly does is it actually removes the decimal value every frame. So what will happen is it will draw the circle at this position for 2 frames, and then it goes on to the next part, and then for 2 frames instead of 1 frame, 1 frame, 1 frame. So just to see that in action, if we try running it, you see the circles creeping slowly to the edge. All right, so now that you got that, let's minimize these and let's get into random. So now random is interesting because you can do a lot of crazy stuff with random. I mean, random is already crazy, but hey, let's try it out. So let's say we want to, let's, instead of assigning 50, let's assign a random value. So the way that you do that is you do random, 0, and let's say 50. So this means that it will go from any random number between 0 and 150. So let's say 3, 5, 10, 15, anything in between 0 and 50. So if we go ahead and do that, so let's remove this increment because we don't need that anymore. And let's run it. Okay, so now you see that it's randomly over here. If I try running it again, now it's on some other side, but this is not really that interesting. What we want to do is really, we want to, let's say, jiggle it around. So what you want to do is, first of all, let's make sure that, let's say the circle X, let's make it width /2. So it's in the middle of the screen. And now what you want to do is, this one will be, so this is where we draw our stuff, right? Draw stuff. And here is our logic. So now we're getting into, instead of drawing stuff, we'll get into stuff like adding, multiplying, subtracting, getting random numbers. So what we'll do is we'll do the same thing as circle X plus 1. What we did before, so this is increment if you remember. Instead of plus 1, let's make that number random. And let's make the number between -3 and +3. So if we run that now, you'll see our circle jiggling around left to right, left to right. What's happening is every single frame, draw keeps on running, and every time a random number is picked, let's say 3, If 3 is picked, then it moves the circle to the right. If -3 is picked, it moves the circle to the left. And anything in between, if it's a negative number, moves to the left. Positive number moves to the right. Okay, so now that we got that, let's move on to print line. So print line is basically, it's not really like, you don't really need it per se. It's more like something like, it's super, super helpful if like your code is doing something and you know it's not supposed to be doing that. So let's stop this guy. And it doesn't show any error, so that's the problem. For example, we saw that type mismatch error before about the float and the int, and we knew instantly what to do. But let's say there's no error and you don't know what's going wrong. Like for example, why doesn't the circle show on the screen? So let's say if we do something like circle x is equal to 0, and let's remove this because we already assigned our variable over here, and let's move our circle over just a bit. So let's move it a bit down, and let's make it a little smaller. So 24, 24. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is inside our logic, what we'll be doing is, let's say we put, let's say -2 and 0, and let's try running this. So if we run it, where did our circle go? I mean, what could be the problem? So let's say like you're like thinking that what went wrong. So you might think maybe the problem is circle x. So let's go into print line circle x. So what this will do is this will print out, if I run it, this will print out the x value of our circle. As you can see, actually what's happening is the circle keeps on moving to the left. And that's why it's not on the screen. So easy fix, we just go into here. Oh, okay, so this is the problem. It's from -2 to 0. It should be from 0 to, let's say, 2. So if we try doing that and we run it, now it's doing what we wanted to do in the first place. All right, so now that you got that, let's learn about conditionals. So if else. If you've taken coding classes before, or if you know coding at all, conditionals are the first step into making your code smart, basically. Making it decide for itself what to do. So let's get into this coding sketch again. Let's stop this guy. And now let's just clean up the code. We don't need this anymore. We don't need that. And let's bring it back to circle x is equal to circle x plus 1. Alright, so now that we have this, and of course you already know what this does. This just moves the circle from left to right. Easy, right? So the problem is that we have this sad moment where we have to say goodbye to our little circle friend because it has nothing, like there's nothing here stopping it. So what we want to do is we want to make it so that it should stop. It should say that, hey, I've hit the edge. I should start moving left now. So what I need to do then is, so let me just minimize this. Let me stop that. What we need is a conditional statement. A conditional statement is basically like a if, let's say for example, if I put something like is 5 greater than 4, this is true. So this will output, let's say this will output true. Is 3 equal to, oh, I just wanted to show you this double equals means is this equal to, because we used the assignment over here, right? We can't use this equal sign over here. So what we need to do is we have to make sure that we use a double equals to make sure that we're asking equals instead of assigning. So double equals, let's say 4. Obviously, this is false. And so on and so on. if we say, let's say 5 is not equal to 5, so this just means not equal to, right? So is 5 not equal to 5? That's false. And so on. There's more that I'll cover, and we'll just take a look at that. So a very small example that we'll take a look at is, let's see. So let's say I want to get rid of this, and I just want my background. And now what I want is, if Mousex is greater than 200 pixels, then I want to put inside this block of text. So this one will only run if my x value of my mouse is greater than 200. So let's put the background to, let's say an orangish color, like a super orange color. And let's make it a little bit wider for you guys. So if we run it, let's say that my mouse is somewhere over here and it goes to that threshold. So once my mouse crosses that invisible line, so there's like 200 pixels right about here, it will turn orange. So that's what it means by making your code smart. It knows that this variable over here has gotten greater than 200, so that's why it's, it becomes orange. And in fact, let's actually add a line, because it's really hard to see. Stroke 255. This just makes the line white. And let's make the line 200, 0, 200, and height. So what this does is it draws a point over here, and it draws another point over here. And if we try running it, we can see our line. So this is the threshold. If we go over, it becomes orange. So now for our ball example. Let's bring it back to, let's remove all this. Let's make our ball white. Let's make sure that we actually have a circle. So ellipse x 150, 240, 224, 24. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we'll create a variable called x. So this we already know is, let's call it a float. X is equal to 0, let's say. And what we'll have is, we'll just make the size a little bit smaller. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a Boolean. So a Boolean has only one value, false or true. So let's say that we have a Boolean that says going is equal to false. So our ball is not moving, basically. So if we put in if going, so going is false, right? And let's do this. If going is false, or if going is true, then run this. So it will make the ball move to the right. So move to the right. And this going will only become true if, let's say, we want to do if the mouse is pressed. And you've learned this last class too, this function mouse pressed. And if the mouse is pressed, we're going to do going is equal to true. So now, again, so we have this, let's remove that. So we have this x value, which is 0. And the x value, actually, let's put it a little bit to 100, let's say. So we have this, this guy over here, and he is not moving. And what will happen is, going is false right now, but once I click it, it'll start moving. It'll start moving to the right. But it doesn't stop. That's the problem. That's the problem that we had before. So what we'll do is this. let's say that the mouse is pressed. Let's stop it from moving. So what we'll do is inside mouse pressed, we'll do if going. So if it's going, right? So if the ball is moving, we're gonna keep it over here. And let's stop it from moving. Else, so this is another part, which is else. So if going is true, it runs this. If going is false, then it runs this. So what we want to do is we want to keep the ball moving. So if we run this now, we'll see that we have this ball. If we click it, it's going. If I click it, it's going. And if I click it again, it stops. Going, stops. Going, stops. But it still doesn't hit that wall. So the thing is, this is a lot of stuff. What we're actually doing is we're just switching between going to be false and going to be true. So what we can do is, instead of doing all this, let's just set going is equal to, or is equal to not going. So what this means is that if it's true, then it becomes, so if going is true, then it becomes not true, which means false. And if going is false, it becomes not false, which means true. So if we try running that, it's a little easier to just show you. We have the ball, running, stop, running, stop. So yeah, so that is what Boolean expressions are, what conditionals are. Next, what we're going to learn is logical operators. So and, or, not. So let's try running over here. Okay, so let me just put some code down. Let me remove all this. And let's create our size bigger. 360. And let's set the background to black. And now let's remove all this. Okay. All right, so now that we have this, let's do what we want is we want to introduce the AND logical operator. So let's say we have two lines. So this line is 0, 100, and height. And let's copy this and let's move it over by 200 pixels. Hold on. Oh, and we want to put this too. There we go. So if we run that, we have this. So we have one line over here and one line over there. So what we want to do is we want to basically, when our mouse goes inside the two lines, we want to turn the background red. But if the mouse is outside, we want to keep it black. So let's go back to this and let's try doing something. Let's try this. So if Mousex is greater than 100, so that means if the mouse is moving over here, what we want to do is, it's just, whoa, where'd it go? There we go. So if it's moving beyond that first line, we want to turn the background red. So that's my red. And what I want to do is, let's say I want to also, the mouse is greater than 200. I also want the background to be red. So that's what I want, right? Or if it's less than. Because we want if it's in between the lines. So if you can see over here, what gives? I mean, like the mouse is entirely, it's supposed to be, see, the problem is that whenever the mouse is over here, it is less than 200. So this one makes it red. If it's over here, it's still less than 200, so it still makes it red. And if it's over here, this guy makes it red. So that's a problem. What we want to do is we want it, if the mouse X is greater than 100, so over here, but less than 200. So what we can do is, let's introduce the AND operator. So AND mouse X is less than 200. So if we try running this, we'll see that it actually turns red only when it's between these two lines over here. Okay, so now that you got that, let's try introducing the OR logical operator. So instead of AND, so this is AND, let's introduce OR. So OR is just two, basically these pipes. It's right above your enter key, and if you do shift that, you'll get these OR, this OR symbol. So if we try running this, so let's say if it's greater than 200, or it's less than 100, so basically we're flipping the idea. Instead of being inside the lines, we want it to be outside the lines. So it'll be red as long as you're, outside the lines. It'll be black if it's inside the lines, and red outside. Okay, and finally, we should introduce the not. So not is basically this. So let's say we want, let's say we don't want this. We want to put a not operator. So let me move it over here. This is not. So whatever this was giving before, it will basically flip the true or false. So this is not. Run that. And now it's basically flipped. If it's outside, it's black. If it's inside, it's red. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to take a quick little breather, just like, 1-2 minutes, before we get into the bouncing ball project. So this one will be fun. I'm just going to let you guys just, and we'll just meet in 1 minute, okay? All right, let's all come back to the bouncing ball project. All right, so what I'll do is, let me get back to the bouncing ball. What we wanted, first of all, is we wanted a ball that kept bouncing left to right between the walls, right? So what I'll do is I'll clean everything up. Let's make sure that float circle x is equal to that, and float. So and we have, let's just set circle x 0. Let's make the background a grayish color. Let's remove this and set the fill to 100 to make it gray inside, and stroke 500, and let's create a circle. So you guys already know this. Circle x. Let's put it in between the, let's put it right in the middle of the screen. Let's make it 40 by 40. And so now what we have over here is a circle. So what we want to do right now is we want to make sure that the circle moves to the right. So what we'll do is set the, we need a speed basically, like a speed of the circle. So what we'll create is we'll create our own user variable, right? So let's stop this. X speed, let's call it x speed. And let's set to, let's say 5. And let's make sure that it increments every single time that it draws out the circle. So circle x is equal to plus x speed. So every time it draws, it will go up by this speed variable. And now, well, we'll try running it. So we have this circle. Look at it go. Oh, so quick. Hold on. Let me just make sure that I grab it really quickly. Let's run it. And this circle is gone, and it's not stopping for anybody. What we want to do is if the circle, so if the circle's x is greater than its width, so the width of the screen, then we want to basically make it minus. So instead of adding it, we'll keep subtracting it. So it should go to the left, right? Instead of adding, going to the right, we're going to the left using this. Let's try running it. And what you will see is, if I try stopping it and running it again, you'll see the circle get stuck over here. But why is that? It should be going to the left, right? What's happening is that every time that this draws, right? So let's say this only runs if the circle x is greater than this width. So that means that, let's stop there. That means that every time you continuously draw the next frame and then it moves it to the left. Draws the next frame, then moves it to the left. Draws the next frame and moves it to the left. The problem with that is that now it's stuck and it has nowhere to go. So what we can do is, let's try stopping this, all right? And let's make it, okay. So instead of this over here, let's set the x speed to -5. Let's set this to 2 because it's way too fast for you guys. 2. And let's set if the circle x is less than 0, so we want to make sure that when it's going to the left, we don't want it to overshoot and, we have the same problem. So let's set the speed to 2. So let's try running it. And now this circle will start moving and it bounces off. There we go. We now have a bouncing circle, a bouncing ball. But this is kind of verbose. There's a lot going on over here. So what if we can just, use the logical operators that we learned from before? So if the circle x is greater than the width, or the circle x is less than 0, then we want it to turn around, right? We want it to turn around. So that means that x speed is equal to x speed times -1. So if x speed is positive, it'll turn into negative, and if x speed is negative, it turns into positive. So if we run that, we will have the same effect. So there we go, that's our bouncing ball project. Next, what we have, the final thing that we're going to take a look at, let's stop you, is our loops. So while and for loops are the ones that we're going to look at. So first of all, let's take a look at our code and let's take a look at while loops. So while loops are basically, they're looping through things that you don't want to draw many times. Let's say you want like 100 circles. You don't want to take this ellipse and take it and copy paste again and again and again. We have a loop to do that for you. So what we'll do is we'll just remove this because we're done with that. Let's remove that. And let's see, is there anything else we should remove? Let's set that to 400, 300 to make it a little smaller for you guys. Let's set the background to black so it's easier for you guys to see. And let's remove all this. So we have a clean slate. What we'll do is we'll create, let's create a ellipse. So a circle. What we want to do is, let's say 0, 150, 16 by 16 circle. Run that. And we have a single circle over here. Now what we want to do is we want to continuously loop a circle again and again and again and again and again. Draw a circle from here all the way to over here. So what we'll do is we'll set, let's say, so this guy will be changing the entire time. So let's call this x. Let's create a variable called float x is equal to 0. And over here, after our background, let's set x is equal to 0, right? And let's do a while loop. So a while loop basically takes a Boolean expression. So this can either be true or it could be false. Well, false. So if it's true, it will continuously loop through this, and then once it becomes false at the end, it will come out of this while loop. So it's basically like an basically like an if statement, but in this case, it just continuously keeps on going, while an if statement just runs once. This one can run infinitely. That's how many times it can run. So inside here, what we'll say is, let's say if x is less than width, let's draw this circle over here. Okay, so let's make sure that our fill is, make it gray, our stroke, because we want our circle to have a white outline, 255. And what we'll see over here is if we try running it, we're gonna run into a problem. The problem here is that this guy will continuously run again and again and again and again and again. No matter how many times that this will always be it will always be true, right? So continuously run. So what we need is we need to make sure that we increment it. So what we'll do is let's go over here, and then what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're incrementing by, let's say, 20. So equals x plus 20. So this will continuously run, and at 20, then x will go into the 20, then 40, then 60, and so on and so on. So now we have a line of circles. So you have to, first of all, make sure that you have an exit condition. This is called an exit condition. This will make sure that eventually this whole thing will become false, because eventually the x value of your circle will come out of the canvas. And this is basically the same with Mousex, right? So if you say, let's say, instead of x, let's remove this and remove dot. Oh wait, whoa. Okay, so now what we'll do is, let's say while x is less than width, let's set it to, instead of 20, let's put it mouse x. So this will instead increment by mouse x. Now the problem over here is that it's not responding to the mouse x. That's because mouse x, when you run your code, it's implicitly equal to 0. So the problem with that is that if mouse x is 0, then that means this entire thing will be equal to 0, right? If this thing is 0, then this guy will this will continuously run, and then you have your single circle again. So what we need to do is we need to introduce so if we're inside here, if mouse x is less than 1, we want to make sure that x is equal to, so we want to add 1 to x, just to make sure that x is always 1, and even if mouse x is 0. So else, if we do have a mouse x, we should do x is equal to x plus mouse x. So really simple. If mouse x is 0 or anything less than it, it will keep this. Else, mouse x will be added to x. So if we run that, we will see this over here. What is going on over here? Let's try to figure out what's the problem. So the reason is that we haven't, every time draw runs, let's say mouse x, so let's say x becomes greater than the width, then there's literally nothing here that's stopping it from getting less than the width. So what we should do is copy this, put it over here. So every time draw runs, every time the circle is drawn, it will set x is equal to 0, and it will check what's the mouse x. If the mouse x is greater than 1, then do this. If not, do this. So now we see our circle. If we try moving it over, you'll see that it responds to our mouse x. If our mouse x is super small, it draws the spacing is super small. If our mouse x is super wide, then the spacing is super wide. In fact, let's make this really, really wide for you guys. So let's say 1,000, the width is, let's say the width is 1,000. So you can see every single circle in action. So we have all these circles. Check that out. Isn't that amazing? That's incredible. So let's go away from circles and let's try making a grid. So instead of circles, we'll put lines. So let's create a line. So let's see, what should we change? This is fine. This is fine. Oh, we don't need a fill because we're talking about lines, right? Lines don't have, insides. And we will need of course, our x. And also, one more thing. Even though I put float here and I'm not really adding decimal stuff to it, it's probably a good idea to put floats because floats can take care of integers and decimal values. So you don't want to create an integer value and then go like, I should have done a float. Just do floats all the time. I mean, there's no biggie. Just go with floats all the time. So let's remove all this so you guys can understand. Let's set this to 50 and let's go with a stroke weight. So I'm sure that you guys haven't seen this before. Stroke weight basically means how thick are the lines. So let's say if we wanted to make 2 pixels wide, then we'll have a line that is 2 pixels wide over here. If we stop it, there we go. And let's make it a little smaller because there we go. Okay. So we have background 0, 250, stroke weight. And for every time that so we have to draw a line, of course. Forgot about that, I can't believe that. And let's make it there. So we have a line. Perfect. So now let's put a while loop into it. So let's put while there. So what we want is while x is less than width, draw this line. And every time we want to increment x by 50. So if we run it, we have a spaced out line. So line here, line here, line here, all between 50 pixels wide. Let's do the same thing for our y variable. So let's create a float x. So float, we have float x, so now let's put float y. And let's do the exact same thing, except we're doing y. So y, 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 and y. And instead of width, let's make sure that the lines aren't going over the height. Alright, so, and let's make sure that the width is there. So from this point to here, right? If we run it, we'll see, what's going on over here? We do have that, that's true, that's true. Oh, I see, this is supposed to be 0, y, and this is supposed to be width and y. So from 0 to y, that means from 0 till y, so y is over here. So this point till width y, so width y, so another point over there. So if we run that again, we have a grid of lines. So bear with me, now's the interesting part. Let's try to add spacing. So instead of 50, let's put something. Let's create a variable called float spacing. Set it to equal to. Let's set it equal to 50 because these are all 50. And let's copy spacing, put it over here, and put it over here. Easy. Let's set that equal to 0 because it's looking a little wonky. And let's run it. And now we have the same thing. Now what we can do now is let's get funky with spacing. So instead of spacing setting it to 50, what we'll do is every time it runs, let's set the spacing to spacing plus our old friend random. So let's say -2, 2. If we run this, check this out. This is, we are, that's, I don't know what you're gonna do with that, but that is so interesting. I mean, what's happening is every time draw runs, spacing gets a new value depending on if it's plus or minus 2. So you can even like make it even more crazy by making it double, right? Let's run that. And it's getting even more funky. All right. So now that we got that, whoa, stop that. Now for a final loop. This, really, you don't need this loop, but it's kind of interesting on its own. So what we have over here is, we have over here. So first what we're doing is we're initializing the variable. So this is initializing variable. So we are initializing the variable, which means that we're creating the variable and we're assigning it, right? Next, we have a Boolean expression in while. So in the while loop, we have either true or false, and this evaluates whether this is true or false. So that's our second thing. Then we have our logic right over here. So let me just write this. So this is number 1, this is number 2, and this is number 3. And finally, we have something to kick us out of the loop, which is our incrementation. So this over here, like x equals x plus spacing, right? So this kicks us out of this loop. Now, people might think that this is a lot to digest. This is a lot of stuff to basically do on your own. So instead, what you can do is, instead of this, let's create a for loop. Let's make sure that we initialize, so that our first thing over here, right? Actually, let's just copy this guy and paste it over here. So we create our x value. We have our x value have the condition, so what the condition has to be met for this loop to run, and how much you have to increment. So if we copy that, there. So how much we have to increment by this much. So, and we can completely remove that. What's awesome about this, whoa, let's go back to our loops. What's awesome about this is that we can set our variable, we can make sure that this is what's supposed to be, like the condition that's supposed to be met, run this, and then check if x, and then increment it. And then do it all over again and again and again. Some people like for loops because of this, how it's super compact. And if we actually try running it, it will be the exact same thing. Check it out. While loops and for loops, you literally, they're basically the same thing. So let me just reduce this. So now we guys have come to the end of our session. Thank you so much for coming to this week, guys, and good job once again, and I will see you next week.